in the WURD studio on the Delaware River.
Absolutely.
It's a very nice day.
No rain today. Look at that. That's incredible.
Know.
Each week we come to you on Fridays from 5 to 7 p.m. to bring you the organizers, movement and thought leaders, elected officials, and community members who are creating solutions to the issues that impact your life on the local, state, national, and international levels. On the boards tonight is engineer extraordinaire Troy Wilmore, who is capably producing and engineering the show today. And do you want to talk about our guest that we have coming on a little bit?
Yeah, later on in the show, I think about 5:20, we're going to have Jamila Medley, who's the executive director of the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance. We had Jamila on probably a year and a half ago when we were first starting out.
Yes, in the early days.
Yes, talking about the Philadelphia Cooperative Movement. I know her organization is also known as PACA, Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance, PACA, and they just finished up an educational series, and they're going to be doing another one. But it was like a study group looking at the history of cooperative economics in the Black community, and the direction for cooperatives going forward. And so she's going to come on and talk about what they dug into in that learning series, and just kind of what's happening with the state of cooperative economic movement in Philadelphia, and what that presents for us as an opportunity to develop community wealth, basically.
Absolutely.
So she'll be on later. I'm excited to have her back.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that conversation. You know, this whole notion of economics and Black economics is very important to me and very dear to me. So. And of course, each week we welcome you, our listeners, as our primary guest. And so to join in the conversation, get ready to have your pen ready so you can call in and use our call-in numbers at 1-866-361-0900. Again, 866-361-0900 or 215-634-8065. You can also listen to us online at www.wordradio. That's WURDradio.com. And we are live on Facebook at 4Word. So you can go on Facebook and type in the search box 4Word, FORWURD, and you will be able to pull up our show live on Facebook and join us as we lift up our conversation tonight about economics and all the things that are really important to you, our listeners here in the city of Philadelphia. So, Amadi, what's on your mind? What have you been thinking about this week as you've been recovering?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, you know, when you're laid up sick, oftentimes all you have the energy to do is watch TV and consume news, unfortunately, which is what I spent a lot of time doing. I didn't only watch news. I was, binge watching shows and stuff like that. But, yeah, I mean, we got to talk about the inhabitant of the White House for a second. He's really going off the deep end. I mean, you know, each week we could say that, but it just gets worse. It just incrementally gets worse and worse and worse. First, we should say that Mueller spoke for the first time in 2 years publicly.
Come on now. Let's talk about that.
He's basically resigning his post as the special counsel. And he spoke for a whole 9 minutes, and like the whole world ground to a halt to listen.
Absolutely.
Or the whole U.S. ground to a halt, and all of the people who follow that kind of stuff. And I mean, key takeaways, he reminded us that the key issue at the center of his whole investigation was not necessarily Trump himself, but was the fact that the Russian government had multiple systematic efforts to interfere with our electoral system. And sometimes we forget about that in all of the swampiness of Trump and everything. He also said a very interesting statement, which should have been crystal clear to everybody if they hadn't already understood this from the Mueller report. He said that if he, quote, had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, he would have said so.
Yes.
Meaning he did not have confidence that the president did not commit a crime.
Absolutely.
And he said that the Constitution, via the Department of Justice guidance memo that prohibits him from bringing charges against a sitting president exists, but that the Constitution has a process, and that is impeachment.
Yes.
He did not say impeachment explicitly, but that's what he was alluding to.
Yes.
Most people agree. And the last thing he said is basically that these would be his last words on the subject, and go read the report if you want any more from him.
If you want more information, go read. My report speaks for me.
Right.
Yes.
So, which is disappointing because I think it is important for people to hear from him. And I think he will, in the end up testifying, because I think he will be subpoenaed to testify, and then he will have to. So, yeah, but, so I guess he was just trying to clear the record before he stepped out of office. And then I think the other thing, just to add to the mix, and then we can talk about our perennial conversation on whether we should move to impeachment now or later. The Republican Congressman Justin Amash from Michigan, he came out as the first Republican to call for impeachment of the president. He was crystal clear about that, no bones about it. And he had a town hall meeting in his district this past week, I think over the Memorial Day weekend holiday. And it was interesting because a lot of the people there, well, first he came out and got a standing ovation because I think a lot of people appreciated that he was willing to speak out against his party and against the president.
Right.
And it was mostly a Republican audience because it's a mostly Republican district.
Right.
And some people spoke up, questioning what he was doing. Others said, I'm a Republican and I support what you're doing and I admire your courage for speaking out. And then there was an interesting, many people may have seen this clip, there was an interview with one of the attendees, an older white woman, I think, who's in his district, who basically said, I didn't know that there was anything negative in the Mueller report about the president. I mostly get my news from conservative sources, this is her words, and they have said nothing about anything negative in there about him. So I was really surprised to hear that. And she was really her eyes had been opened. As Amash, the congressman, had gone through and basically listed out all the problematic things that the president had done that he, said in the report. The other thing that Amash has said is that he doesn't think that many, if any of his colleagues have actually read the report.
Well, it's like 400 pages.
I know, but isn't that dereliction of duty?
No, look.
It is.
These congressional leaders do not read these reports. They hire an intern to read it, and they find the most salacious statements that are in it, and they're like, give me that so when I go to a hearing, I have that to work with.
I know, but that's still dereliction of duty because...
Troy seems to agree with you on that one.
Yes, thank you, Troy, for giving me the thumbs up and the Black Power salute on that. Basically, their job is to oversee the executive branch. So how can you oversee the executive branch by having your intern read a report and cherry pick quotes?
But look, Mitch McConnell and the conservatives in the House don't want to read the report because they don't want to be held responsible for anything in there that they read that then they might have to actually act on.
I know, but they're being held responsible whether they read it or not because that's their job.
The day the report came out, Mitch McConnell and others came out and said, all right, the report's done. We've heard that there's no collusion. Move on. Right. That's what they said. That's exactly what they said. So there's no expectation that they would have read anything. For them, it was a paperweight. It was something to decorate their little tables inside their offices to let people see that they actually had it in there. But it's sort of like people that have Bibles that they show that have dust on them, but they actually never open them in the first place.
The binding has never been...
Right. It's never been cracked open. Like the first time you open it, it creaks because it's so new because it's never been open. It's the same thing. Those conservatives haven't read that report. They haven't looked at it.
Well, that's what the congressman was saying. And I mean, the interesting thing, everybody's in love with him now, partially including myself because he's kind of cute, but his dad's Palestinian, I think, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, but he's like, finally, he's the first Republican to actually, stand up and do the right thing, which is wonderful. We have to remember that he is a conservative that, disagrees with most of my core beliefs and values.
Yeah, I can't see you with a conservative. That's like
No, it's not happening.
I don't care how cute he is.
I can look at him from afar and be like, oh, okay. But no. We can't get into a conversation. But I guess the question is, will he be he's like the first small crack in the...
But he's not the only crack,
in the
though.
Republican Party.
Yeah.
In terms of, people actually starting to criticize their own.
Well, I mean, part of the challenge that we have here is that there's a blue wall involved in this as well, which people are not talking about, which are the congressional. So there were 27 races, congressional races, where Democrats held seat where Trump won the election.
Right.
And part of the challenge of that is that if they can't get too far out attacking him, if they want to get reelected, in 2020 when he's going to be running again at the same time. So they have to somewhat be moderate. And so anybody that's seen attacking a president who was so popular at one point, now it does beg to ask the question for some of them, especially who won races recently where their seats flipped. If there's Trump pushback, do they really have to have that fear? Right. But, I think that that's something that they really need to, they need to address. But there are Democrats, especially in red states, that are afraid to come out hard on this. And so Nancy Pelosi and crew really don't have the votes that they need to even move an impeachment process forward, which really goes to the fact that the conservatives, even when they can't stand each other, will still vote together. I mean, that's the bottom line.
I know. Don't get me started on that.
I mean, the only maverick they had, and if I could just, call him a maverick, since Sarah Palin did, was John McCain, right? John McCain was the one that saved...
You don't need to quote Sarah Palin about anything. But anyway.
But I'm just saying, John McCain saved ACA, right? He was the one that saved ACA.
He was the one vote no to repeal the ACA.
Right, but everybody else is scared to death of Mitch McConnell, so they won't fall out of line for fear of not, getting resources, PAC money, whatever it is that they need to get reelected and keep their job. Because after all, a politician's primary job is not to conserve his constituents, it's to get reelected. So, that is part of the dilemma that we are contending with in the U.S. House and Senate right now. You have people that are more concerned about their job than doing the right thing for America.
Yeah, that's why we need to create independent, progressive candidates that actually are of the people and come from everyday working people. Because of the other, the dynamic involved here is that most of Congress and the Senate are millionaires or multi-millionaires.
Or billionaires, yeah.
And the class that just came in the 2018 midterms, for many of them that wasn't the case. They were actually everyday people.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, not to belabor the point about the inhabitant of the White House.
But besides the fact he's got to go. So our solution to the Donald Trump dilemma is that he's got to go. And there's two ways he can go. He can go out in handcuffs, or he can go out by being voted out. Which would you prefer to see? That's what I want to know. I was actually, so I have to admit, I was home a little while before coming to the studio today, and I actually had the chance to watch The View, and David Letterman was on the station, and he was talking about his experience with Donald Trump, and Joy Behar and others are over there are all kind of talking about their experience with Donald Trump. And he said something that was intriguing to me. He said, before he became a politician, he just seemed like an everyday dude. He would come on, he would talk trash, he would have to be on the Letterman show, stuff like that. He said, and then something changed when he started running for re-election. And Joy Behar said things changed for him when he started going after Obama. But actually, things changed when he went after the Central Park Five. And I think. But
was it ever really a change?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think
he was a spoiled.
Well, David Letterman said he was a goofball. He was a goofball, basically.
Dummy for a long, long time. I mean, he still is that, but he just has a lot of power.
Yeah. Well, he's got a lot of power, and then doesn't really know what to do with it. So he doesn't know how to handle power well, other than making it serve him.
Mm-hmm. It's all about him.
Yeah, it's all about him. And I mean, I think that this is the struggle. So, we were talking about this earlier, so I just have to talk about this on the air. So this is a little secret that a lot of people don't know about me, is that I'm really into Japanese Grand Sumo wrestling. So, and I don't like the American stuff. I don't like the other, because it's not the same thing. You have to really watch the you have to watch the Japanese in the Grand Sumo tournaments. But here's the interesting thing. So there's been ongoing talks with Japan, just like China and other places, about trade and about what to do. And Trump has basically been making some very caustic statements about Japan and about trade deficits and things of that nature. So he decides to go over to Japan and go meet with the prime minister and, to have talks about, trade and everything. And so Japan's rolling out the red carpet because
Let's say talks. Let's put talks in quotes.
Quotes?
To go have talks.
Yeah.
Everything is a photo op to him. He doesn't know anything enough to even be able to speak about it. But go ahead.
But let me talk about what he did.
Ostensibly to have talks. But
yes, to go have talks.
Really
right.
to have his picture taken.
Right, to have his picture taken. Well, this is really what he wanted to do was this. So in sumo, in Grand Sumo, the seasons of sumo are measured by the emperors, right? So there's like a time for the emperor, and the emperor just retired, and so there was a season of that. And this was the first tournament with the new emperor in place. And normally, when a new emperor shows up at the first tournament, that they're over, and they actually show up and present the cup. So Trump wants to go to Japan to go have these trade talks, end quote, and as a result of this, though, he cuts the deal because he wants to be able to go to the Grand Sumo tournament. So going to the tournament wouldn't have been a problem. But here's the thing. He decided that he wanted to present the trophy to the winner of the tournament. So sumo is really almost religious in Japan. It's not just a sport like baseball or football, even though football can almost be seen as religious in this country, or hockey or basketball. It's almost religious. And there are only 3 people that present the trophies at the sumo tournaments. He's either the prime minister, the emperor, or the head of the sumo association, who's usually a yokozuna, which is like the top level, formerly retired yokozuna, top level sumo wrestler. So they cut a deal so that Trump could go over and present a cup to the winner of the tournament prior to the prime minister. So in the middle of the tournament, which is the last day, it's the biggest day, crowd's humongous, they stopped the tournament so that Trump could come into the building. There was no wrestling going on, so Trump to come in. So you have all these thousands, tens of thousands of Japanese, and you got these 2 white people that are walking in the middle, and a bunch of white Secret Service people that are around him too. And he comes in with the prime minister, and he goes to sit down. And he watches the tournament. He sees like the last 3 wrestling matches. And I mean, there are hundreds of matches over 15 days. He sits down, and then he comes up to present the trophy to the winner of the sumo tournament. So this is why I'm upset about this. One, there's never in the history of Grand Sumo, and it's been going on hundreds of years, there's never been a foreigner that's presented a trophy. Never.
He had to put himself right in the middle.
It's just embarrassing.
Exactly.
Then he gets up there, he does his little speech, they get a written speech and everything. He tries to say something in Japanese, and then he goes away. And, but it was just there was like cultural appropriation and all that. There was certainly a disrespect to the tradition of that. And he was using that as a ploy to be able to get him what he wanted, which was to go see Grand Sumo and present a trophy when no other person outside of Japan has ever done that. And I'm like, really? You couldn't leave that intact? You just couldn't leave that alone? But you have to invade spaces of people of color all the time and go in and become a behind and, try to make it like, you're super wonderful. So now he comes back and it's like, oh, the people in Japan love me. They think I'm wonderful. Oh, they were taking pictures of me. They were shaking my hand. And I'm sure some of the people like this, who's this buffoon that's coming up here?
Yeah. I think he's internationally considered a buffoon.
Absolutely. Anyway, we're up on a break.
Yeah. I just want to just acknowledge that I appreciate you black nerding out on that story that you just shared.
Yes.
All the details of that particular level of, or particular style of sumo wrestling.
Yes.
And not that many people know that. So
that's a little secret about Dwayne. You all learned today. I like Japanese Grand Sumo wrestling.
That was a black nerd moment.
Yes. All right.
All right. So we have to go to a break, but when we return back from the break, I think we have our guest Jamila Medley on the line from Philadelphia Area Cooperatives Alliance. You're listening to Solutions on WURD. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update on Word Radio. It's a busy afternoon on the Philly roads. This traffic report is sponsored by unbound.org. Starting off the highways, we still have major problems getting through Manayunk. Ridge Avenue shut down between Main Street and Manayunk Avenue for a crash with downed wires. That's causing a ton of extra volume on Main Street and more, so expect heavy delays through Manayunk. Schuylkill Expressway westbound, that is crawling as you head from about Vare Avenue to 30th Street. An earlier disabled bus is cleared. Further west, you're jammed the Vine Expressway to Belmont, then Gladwin out to 476. Eastbound Schuylkill, jamming 202 to Belmont, then the Boulevard down to South Street. On the Vine Expressway, you're jammed eastbound 76 across to 95, westbound from Broad Street back to the Schuylkill Expressway. 95 northbound is stop and go Naaman's Road to the Commodore Barry Bridge. Again, as you head from Island Avenue to Broad Street, the Walt Whitman Bridge to Bridge Street. Southbound 95 jamming Woodhaven to Academy, Cottman down to Girard, and the airport down to the Commodore Barry. Boulevard northbound, stop and go the Schuylkill Expressway all the way up to Broad Street, and the Blue Route northbound is heavy getting on from 95. Southbound slows St. David's down to 95. Walt Whitman Bridge eastbound is heavy into Jersey. That's because 42 southbound jams the Walt Whitman Bridge down to 295. 676 southbound jamming Atlantic Avenue down to 42. And on 295 southbound, it's heavy from 73 down to 42. Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Brendan Joseph with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Now, a word weather update. Here's NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Crystal Cly.
Overnight, that temperature going to slide down to about 64 degrees, and we've got a nice dry start to the weekend. 86 degrees for your forecast high Saturday afternoon. Mostly sunny conditions in Philadelphia. And then we go into your Sunday. Sunday, still in the mid-80s, a high of 85 degrees. But we are looking at a chance of some showers and thunderstorms passing in the afternoon into the early evening. Will dry out by the start of the work week. Don't forget, you can stay up to date on your neighborhood forecast by downloading the free NBC 10 app.
Listen to Word Radio on the go with the Word Radio app. Search for WURD in your favorite app store today and take us with you wherever you go. Stay connected to Word Radio, independent Black media.
Don't miss the annual AIDS Education Free Gospel Concert presented by Philadelphia Fight, featuring Norman Hutchins and Zach Williams and One Accord on Saturday, June 1st from 2 to 5 p.m. at Yesha Ministries, 2301 Snyder Avenue. This event is free and open to the public, together lifting everyone's spirit and song. For more information, visit AIDSEducationMonth.org.
Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM. WURD.
Searching for a home care agency that provides care both needed and deserved? Call My Independence at Home at 215-921-2277 for a free in-home consultation. We are committed to providing compassionate home care for the elderly and adults with physical disabilities. 215-921-2277.
The Kimmel Center for the Performing Arts is excited to present the next installment of their Jazz Residency collaboration for 2019. In its 6th year, the Kimmel's Jazz Residency program is designed for groups of local artists to create their amazing personal stories through the jazz music genre. Performing in the Kimmel's SEI Innovation Studio Thursday, June 6th will be trombonist Dan Blacksburg with percussionist Joseph Goldman. Friday, June 7th will feature the amazing sounds of guitarist David Allen, poet laureate Raquel Salas Rivera, and violinist Diana Monroe. And June 8th, the soulful Latin American composer Dario Peñazek, lyricist Maya Peñazek, and singer Ariacine Trujillo. Tickets on sale now for these special BYO events. Visit kimmelcenter.org or call 215-893-1999.
Word TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at Forward. Word TV. Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Solutions. This is your host, Amani Braxton, along with Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Greetings. Can I just say real quick?
Yes.
Shout out to my man Raphael Suleiman, who's listening, who told me that I would probably be a good sumo wrestler. You are absolutely right. We were just talking about that. And then the second thing he said, I'm a black nerd too. You're in good company, Bishop. Nerds run the world now, with the exception of Trump. So nerds run the world. He talked about Bezos, Gates, Buffett, Jobs, so forth. So yes, I totally agree. Thank you very much, Raphael. Thank you for listening.
All right, validation.
Yes.
All right. Well, now we are joined by our guest for tonight's show, Jamila Medley, who is the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance, PACA. And Jamila, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us. And people who have been staunch listeners of this show for more than a year may remember that we had you on over a year ago. And we, at the end of that conversation, we were like, we have to have you back because what you're doing is so important. And supporting the development of cooperatives, supporting people's understanding and the community education about cooperatives and the community wealth that they can bring and build. It's such an important thing when we live in a capitalist society, and we just kind of take for granted certain things about our economic situation that we should actually be questioning. It doesn't.
Absolutely.
We don't have to be doing things the way we've been doing them. So, Jamila, I wanted to invite you back on because I was prompted by, because of course, I get all your emails from PACA, and I saw you had a learning series or an education series specifically about Black people in cooperatives. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about what you guys covered in that, but also just for people who are just hearing about you for the first time and about PACA for the first time, just talk about what PACA does and what cooperatives are.
Sure. Well, thanks for the invitation to be back on the show. I'm really happy to be having this conversation again. So I'll start maybe by framing cooperatives, co-ops. We can think of them as autonomous organizations where groups of people come together. They have identified a shared need. It can be an economic need, a social need, a cultural need, and they are determined that they democratically want to own and control some kind of enterprise in order to meet their need. And that can look like a grocery store. It can look like housing. It could include credit unions, individuals who may want to, start a cleaning service might decide to do that cooperatively and form a worker-owned co-op. So co-ops can take multiple and varied forms in terms of being able to be owned and controlled democratically by a group of people. And PACA's role is to really support the growth of those kinds of businesses and other kinds of democratically organized businesses in the Philadelphia area. And we do that through providing technical assistance to established and startup co-ops, as well as through education and training, both within cooperatives and their communities, but also more broadly to the general public.
And talk about the advantage of a co-op versus a traditional for-profit business or LLC structure, because I think, there's a lot of conversation about, we need to support Black-owned businesses. We need to support small businesses that, we are lacking in economic opportunity and economic wealth in our own communities. The corner stores are owned by people who are not of our communities. All those kinds of conversations about the lack of independent Black economic, wealth and prosperity and enterprises. How does that jive with your sense of what are the advantages of having a cooperative structured business versus the more traditional?
Yeah, I think cooperatives in particular can serve folks who aren't traditionally served in the mainstream economy. I think it's a great way of thinking about how to pool resources together rather than trying to strike it out on your own, finding other people who are willing to invest and share in both the risk and the profit and the surplus that can come with creating your own business. I think there's a way of imagining how within cooperatives, and depending on the kind of co-op it is, they can often be hyper-local institutions. And so if they are within a particular community and it is the community members, the residents of that community who own that business, the assets and wealth that are created have a better chance of staying in that community than if it's some distant stakeholder, just looking after their bottom line. I think, the cooperative principles that are followed by, I don't know, many cooperatives across the world really also imbue concern for community, right? And that we need to be stewards of the folks that we are in community with, as well as the environment. And I think that we also, through this model, have the opportunity to really also imagine how to grow our civic engagement. There's a lot of work around, in my talking about the cooperative structure, I use the word democratic. Right? I think most of us have the experience of practicing democracy almost exclusively at the ballot box. And it shouldn't be that way, I believe. Cooperatives provide an opportunity for us to practice those skills and to figure out how we get to transition those skills beyond our enterprises and beyond the ballot box into our schools, into our religious institutions, into our civic associations, and really live out this value of democracy that we have.
And part of that is because people have to cooperate and have to work together to make the decisions that are involved in any enterprise, and work together, and people have an equal say, or ostensibly would have an equal say in an enterprise if they're coming together and pooling resources. So there's a way that people have to cooperate and work together that people may not be used to doing in an enterprise where there is like one boss or owner and everybody else is the workers and are kind of, their labor is being exploited by that person for the bottom line and for the ultimate gain and enrichment of that top person.
That's right.
Who has most of the say and control in the workplace and the conditions there. So it's not, the other people, to a greater or lesser degree, have less say.
Right. That's right. And I think, this piece around how we are also able to cultivate our relationships through this model. So lots of practicing around trust and building effective communication, and really being able to know one another in order to work together in this kind of a way. So there's a challenge in that for sure. But over time, as I think the skills are developed and cultivated, I think that these are the some of the practices and foundations of the ways of being that we want to have in our communities.
Yeah, Jamila, this is Bishop Royster. How you doing today? Thanks for being on.
Good, thanks.
Good. One of the things that was interesting that, why I think this is so important we're having this conversation, there was a report that came out not too long ago that said that only 2.5% of all businesses in Philadelphia are owned by African Americans. And I think part of that is, some of the things that you're talking about, right? Lack of access to capital, different resources. And part of it is also the fact that we don't keep dollars in the black community. So we literally, a dollar comes into our community and immediately goes right back out the door. So, in many ways, I'm trying to think like what, cooperatives are a vehicle for us to actually build economic wealth and empowerment for the black community that's both community owned, but also can benefit the individual at the same time. Are there special places that are like resourcing and financing opportunities for cooperatives?
Absolutely. I think, this is true for any startup business, right? You have to have a solid business plan together. You have to demonstrate the viability and feasibility of the business that you are striving to create. Depending on the structure of the business, traditional lenders sometimes kind of shy away from the co-op structure because they oftentimes get caught up in their formulas that require personal guarantees. And within the co-op structure, we're really trying to share the burden, right?
Absolutely.
Not have it fall on one person. So there's a lot of education work actually happening around the country with trying to work with traditional funders to kind of learn other strategies for engaging cooperatively owned businesses. And there are also a number of entities, and one example is the financial cooperative. PACA has been a part of this, where we've been working with different groups throughout the country that are working in support of helping to create new democratically owned businesses, particularly co-ops, but doing it through a process where we can build relationships with those business owners and really try to remove a lot of the traditional barriers that are in the way for people being able to get access to credit and capital.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about how do we do that by pooling together our resources. So we have a capacity to be able to make non-extractive loans to cooperatives here, even in the city of Philadelphia, through this grouping of cooperative support organizations throughout the country who are investing together to ensure that we can grow the sector and really allow for folks who traditionally don't get to do this kind of thing, start their own businesses, not under the table, right?
Right.
And really be able to do that and also provide them with the technical assistance that they'll need to have successful businesses from conception through expansion.
Yeah. I mean, but I also think there's also this issue about leveraging community resources at the same time. So I've been working with a colleague up in Massachusetts who does community organizing work, but it's looking deeply at the economic issue in the town that he's in. And we were doing some asset mapping. And one of the things that we were looking at was that a lot of the churches up there, and I should say his town has a lot of immigrants that have moved up there. And we were looking at the asset mapping and looking at the churches that are there. And the fact that these churches are basically just used on Sunday. And part of the challenge that folk were having is that you have this larger immigrant community. One of the main things that many of them were trying to do was start food businesses, but they didn't have a place to do it that was reasonably priced. And we began having a conversation about what it would mean for the church and the community leaders to open cooperative restaurants where they were actually using the churches on Friday and Saturdays and Sundays to be able to set it up as a restaurant that people could, use that. Then we also talked about some of the churches have acres of land. And then there was also a conversation about could the churches be in partnership and cooperation with the community and collectively own. The churches bringing land to the table. The community members are bringing labor to the table to be able to share in growing their fresh produce in the area and then selling it back into the community. So, I think we have a similar issue like that in Philadelphia where we have assets that are available to us, but we're not always leveraging them in the right way.
Yeah, and I think that this is also a particular shift that I'm interested in raising up and really exploring in Philadelphia. I think, nationally when we think about where the co-op movement is going, we often see them as, you referenced the idea of being able to provide, the co-ops can also provide individual benefit. Mm-hmm. And so this idea that, we can have a worker-owned co-op that can be, a bakery or a pizza shop in your neighborhood, right? And that could be great for those people, but how impactful is that one business going to be in actually creating and contributing over time to community wealth building versus really having a mindset and a vision for community-controlled and community-owned enterprises, right? And so what are the seeds? I think historically we know that Black churches have been central to helping to organize Black folks, to ensuring that, historically mutual aid societies and guilds often came out of the, Black churches. Black churches are still, a space that people go to for, to join their church's credit union, right? So we have our money in these spaces already. So how do we leverage that opportunity to really imagine doing more? And I think you're right. The land piece is also, I think, very critical to an understanding about liberation and how do we really examine access to land, right? Who controls the land, and how it gets used.
Sure.
Well, Jamila, we're up on a commercial break. But if you could stay with us after the break, I would love to dig a little bit more into what you just started getting into, because I know one of the first in your recent learning series, your first session was focused on the history of Black cooperative economics. So I would love to hear more about that when we come back from this break. Can you stay with us?
Sure.
Okay, great. You are listening to our special guest, Jamila Medley, Executive Director of the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance. You're listening to Solutions. We will be right back after the break.
Now, a traffic update on Word Radio.
It's an extremely busy commute on the Philly roads. This traffic report sponsored by Stand Up to Cancer. We'll start with the Martin Luther King Drive. That is shut down between Montgomery Drive and the Falls Bridge. Some debris they're cleaning up from earlier flooding. Also off the highways, Ridge Avenue remains closed in Manayunk between Main Street and Manayunk Avenue for a crash with downed wires, and that's causing a ton of gridlock through the area as people try to figure out where to go. On the Schuylkill Expressway, eastbound jam traffic getting on at 202 all the way down to Belmont, then from Montgomery to South Street. Westbound Schuylkill jamming University to Girard, Montgomery to Belmont, then you're heavy from Gladwin out to 476. Vine Expressway eastbound jamming 76 across to 95, westbound stop and go from the Ben Franklin Parkway to the Schuylkill merge. 95 northbound jamming out of Delaware from Naaman's Road to the Commodore Barry Bridge, again from Island Avenue to Broad Street, then from Penn's Landing up to Bridge Street. Southbound 95, that stop and go Woodhaven to Academy, Cottman down to Girard, and the airport to the Commodore Barry. Boulevard northbound stop and go the Schuylkill Expressway to Broad Street, and on the Blue Route northbound it's heavy getting on from 95. Southbound is sluggish from St. David's down to Route 1. Walt Whitman Bridge eastbound is jammed into Jersey. That's because 42 southbound remains jammed from the Walt Whitman Bridge down to 295. Stop and go on 676 southbound, Morgan Boulevard down to 42. And 295 southbound is heavy from 73 down to 42.
I'm Tony Goldwyn. 20 years ago, when my mom had lung cancer, she didn't have many choices. But today you do. If you've been diagnosed with lung cancer, please visit standuptocancer.org/lungcancer to learn more.
For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Brendan Joseph with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Now, a word weather update. Here's NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Crystal Cly.
Overnight, that temperature going to slide down to about 64 degrees, and we've got a nice dry start to the weekend. 86 degrees for your forecast high Saturday afternoon. Mostly sunny conditions in Philadelphia, and then we go into your Sunday. Sunday still in the mid-80s, a high of 85 degrees. But we are looking at a chance of some showers and thunderstorms passing in the afternoon into the early evening. Will dry out by the start of the work week. Don't forget, you can stay up to date on your neighborhood forecast by downloading the free NBC 10 app.
You asked for it, and you've got it. The rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith, will be in the community now more than ever.
I'm out in these streets
with Word Show on the Go, hosted by the rapping professor, Dr. Aaron Smith.
Holla at your boy.
Learn where you can catch Word Show on the Go at wordradio.com or search the hashtag Word Show on the Go. For more information, follow us on social media at onWURD. And stay tuned to Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD and wordradio.com. Enterprise Exterminators provides customers with the highest quality service. Enterprise will evaluate and eliminate whatever pest problems you may have, specializing in bed bugs, fleas, mice, and termites. Hurry down to 4943 Wayne Avenue or call 215-849-7070. Enterprise services Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey and is licensed and insured. Free inspection and do-it-yourself kits are available. Call now and ask about their Word discount. 215-849-7070. Support independent black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com.
Hey loves, Word Radio celebrates Black Music Month with the next installment of the Walter P. Lomax Jr. MD Speaker Series presents Word Speaks. What's going on? Philly's next generation in black music.
At the Barnes Foundation, located at 2025 Benjamin Franklin Parkway, Friday, June 7th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Doors open at 5 p.m. The event is part of the Barnes' first Friday celebration of Marvin Gaye, taking place immediately following the Word panel discussion.
The panel will feature musicians, DJs, and music leaders whose work aimed to amplify the voices of the next generation. Panelists include Solomon Thorne of Songs for the Soul Philly, DJ Geek and Sunny D of the Female Takeover, DJ Reezy from Black Mall Street, and Word's own Kayla J. West.
Moderated by me, the rapping professor Aaron Smith,
and me, Sincerely Sarita, host of The Lounge.
The discussion will also explore how they use their platforms to build community and create spaces to address what's going on in the world today. Seats are limited, so RSVP today at WURDradio.com or call 215-425-7875.
Word Speaks. What's Going On is presented in partnership with the Barnes Foundation and sponsored by Comcast NBC Universal, Pico, and Moravia Health.
3, 2, 1. Oh no. Which button am I?
When every second counts, you can't wing it.
Guys, a little help up here?
In a home fire, you may have less than 2 minutes to get out. So make a family home fire escape plan. Then practice home fire drills at least twice a year so everyone knows what to do when they hear. Prepare your family at ready.gov/fire drill. Brought to you by FEMA, the Ad Council, and Make Safe Happen.
Word TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at forward. Word TV. Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Solutions with your host, Amani Braxton and Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Yo.
And we have our special guest tonight, Jamila Medley, Executive Director of Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance. And before the break, we had just started getting into a little bit about the history of cooperative economics in the black community, and particularly talking about the role of the church as a resource for people. Jamila, I know that you recently had a learning series. I keep calling it a learning series. I don't know what you guys called it, but a series of workshops or discussion. You had a discussion group, basically. And I know the first subject you guys looked into was the history of cooperative economics in the black community. Can you tell us a little bit about what was revealed in that discussion? Because I think it's such an important history that people should know about. We were not born capitalists. We are not. Our heritage is not capitalism.
Yes. I think, a lot of times we also hear these tropes that black folks don't know how to work together. And that is just not true. We are here because we have worked together to survive and to thrive. And, when we started to talk about this history, we began by really invoking our ancestors and inviting them into our space and remembering that in the countries that our ancestors came to, North America from, that they had practices of cooperative economics, and that those practices extended into how they were in relationship with one another here. And I think, one of the earliest, they kind of, as part of the process, we kind of played two games to get at this history, really, and trying to kind of think about how to match up different events and activities over a timeline. And where we began was really with the idea of slave rebellions and work slowdowns as a practice of cooperative economics and mutuality. And that enslaved folks have, human beings want to be free. We want to have self-determination. And we will exercise that in any way that we can. And we know that, 1619 is the historical and documented date that we have for when, white folks formally first introduced black folks to North America. And we know that beginning at that point in time, people were exercising resistance, and they didn't do that only by themselves. They did it together. We looked at, jumping into, the Underground Railroad and thinking about that as part of it, thinking about our bodies, our mind, our potential as our own community assets, as our own individual personal assets that we have that, clearly were of value to others, right? Because they economized it and commodified it. So we fought against that, right? To have ownership over ourselves. So we really wanted to strike that up as part of this process. And then thinking about, even thinking in Philadelphia, Richard Allen and Absalom Jones founding the Free African Society.
Absolutely.
Right? And that these were institutions and places where freed blacks and enslaved blacks who were runaways were coming and needed support. And we weren't able to often get the support that we might have needed from, some kind of municipal social service kind of program. And white folks weren't handing out things. So we created our own institutions, whether they were funeral services, whether they were mutual aid insurance companies that we were establishing to ensure that people could have life insurance or burial insurance. We were doing all of these things, in the 1700s. We were exploring the Combahee River colony, right, of thinking about maroon communities and how they had their own self-determining economies and ways of collectivizing and being and creating their own societies and their own economies towards being able to survive and thrive. So we looked at that, and particularly at the Gullah Geechee Sea Islands and the work that Black women were doing there. And there was just, it's countless examples all the way, through thinking about, People's Grocery Store in Memphis, Tennessee, that was owned by 11 prominent Black men, right? And they owned it cooperatively to ensure that their Black community had a grocery store, right? And we're still talking about using these models to bring food into our communities. So we went from that early history in the beginning of Black folks kind of like being here in North America, and really explored some of these instances. W.E.B. Du Bois, has a book about cooperative economics and Black mutual aid practices, right? And this was happening in the 1800s, and that he was chronicalizing the ways in which Black folks were doing this. And not just in the United States, but in the Caribbean, as well as in countries in Africa. So the history is deep and it is rich. It is something that we continuously return to in order, to live our lives. We were able to kind of like take that history and then imagine and really begin to investigate, well, what are opportunities and what are ways that Black folks are doing this work now? Right? And so we looked at some examples of that, ranging from, folks trying to take care of getting access to land in Oakland, right, by establishing new housing cooperatives and creating creative investment strategies to be inclusive housing opportunities as well as affordable housing opportunities, to a Black Life credit union that is set to open in Minneapolis, right? So we haven't stopped cooperating. And I think that was one of the things that we really wanted to be able to lift up, that this is cooperative economics, creating businesses, is a part of what we do, and we haven't stopped doing it.
So, Jim, let me ask you a question. How do we scale this, right? What is necessary to be able to scale this in Philadelphia? And, I know your organization works with everybody, and so I deeply appreciate that. But, in particular, especially for this show, we're particularly concerned about the African-American community. So how do we scale this? There are folk that have ideas that don't have resourcing. So how do we help scale this, get imagination, help them to dream up partners, people to go in a cooperative with them, and really begin to build this out?
Yeah. I think scale, it's contextualized, right? I think other countries, we can think about Canada, we can think about countries in Europe, other places that have really thriving cooperative economies have them because they have municipal support, right? And so it is because the people understand that the cooperative economy is a good and just economy for most of its people. And they mandate that their legislators support that. And so a lot of attention over the last few years has been shifting in the United States to really beginning to do work to educate our elected officials about cooperative economics, about the co-op business model, and particularly for communities that are poor, who have traditionally been left out of the mainstream economy, and people who are really thinking about economic development and community development and thinking about equitable approaches to doing this work. We have to explore the co-op model, and we have to invest in that. The City of Philadelphia has begun that work. PACA is in contract with the City of Philadelphia to support the development primarily of worker-owned cooperatives by looking at legacy businesses that might be 20, 30 years old in minority communities, and figuring out how do we preserve those businesses, right, when the owners are thinking about retiring. And how do we ensure that we keep jobs in the community and that those employees don't lose their jobs. But one of the strategies that is being presented and really used across the country is thinking about employee ownership and working with owners and the workers to make a transaction so that the owners are selling their businesses to their workers.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've been working closely with the Commerce Department here in the city on a strategy around really kind of like figuring out how do we do more of that kind of economic development here in Philadelphia. And I think education is a big part of this. We have to build up infrastructure to support this kind of work. As I mentioned, I think, like in many ways, capitalism is, antithetical to this work. It's set up to not allow this to work, right? And so when we look at mainstream funders and we're asking them to change their strategies and to change how it is that they're envisioning who's creditworthy, right? It used to be a lot of it was based on reputation and relationship, and now it's just like formulas and algorithms, right? And so we've lost touch with people in that sense. And so, creating our own institutions that can support the enterprises that we have. I think we have to do asset mapping to understand what and where those resources are within our communities. And I think we fundamentally have to really strive to teach our children, our youth, our young adults about cooperation and how to live cooperatively, right? So that these are part of our principles and our ways of being and how we expect the world to be, not just like, I'm going to make it, I'm going to eat, maybe you will, maybe you won't, but I'm really only looking out for myself. We got to, capitalism teaches us to do that, so has socialized us to do that. And we have to decolonize ourselves in order to save ourselves.
Well, capitalism is basically killing Philadelphia right now. When you have, 26% poverty, when 44% of the population, including those under poverty, just live above poverty, and everything is based on the dog-eat-dog capitalist mentality, you're setting people up to not be able to get health care, not be able to get quality education, not be able to get access to medication, not be able to get access to food. The second largest food desert in the country is in the sixth largest city in the nation, which makes absolutely no sense. So, capitalism is killing us, and we've got to find an alternative to be able to implement as a force of will of the people and not of the establishment to be able to make it happen.
That's right.
And I think, I just want to underline something that you alluded to, is that there are, in other countries, there are huge cooperatives that, I think I heard about in Brazil, there's a huge worker-owned cooperative manufacturing plant, right, that employs thousands of people. So this can be done at a large scale, but I think you're right, Jamila, there needs to be investment at the municipal level and belief in that by the government, by our local government, in order to make that happen. We are at the end of our segment with you. We're up on a break. I want to just thank you again for coming on, and there's so much more we could get into with you, but I believe you have a program tonight. Do you?
Actually, we had one last night.
Oh, last night. Okay.
Talking about democratic principles. But we do have a series of leadership development workshops coming up on June 4th, June 11th, and June 22nd. If folks want to visit our website at philadelphia.coop/events, they can find out more about those upcoming activities. That
would be great. Thank you so much, Jamila, for coming on. It's such an important, and it seems like it's just an emerging field of work that you're engaged in terms of turning people onto the idea of cooperative economics here in Philadelphia. We want to keep supporting that, so please let us know if there's any way that we can promote what you're doing. We think it's really, really important. And thank you for all of the work you're doing.
Well, thanks for having me on, and y'all enjoy the weekend.
All right, you too. That was Jamila Medley from the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance. You're listening to Solutions on WURD. We'll be right back.
Get your money straight.
Get my money right.
With Solomon Jones and Akbar Hassan.
Fridays on Wake Up with WURD.
7 a.m. till 10 a.m. Hosted by Solomon Jones. Exclusively on WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and on the WURD Radio app.
Word family. Here's a deal from Dietz & Watson that you don't want to miss.
This week, visit any Brown ShopRite to take advantage of the Dietz & Watson beef available at the special price of just $8.99 a pound. Try out the all-new natural Angus roast beef or the Dietz & Watson corned beef. Both are on sale now through Sunday.
1 week only. Get yours today. Dietz & Watson. It's a family thing. The Kimmel Center offers free arts education programs to schools across the region. Teaching artists visit classrooms to educate, engage, and inspire the next generation using creative learning experiences, and schools take trips to the Kimmel Center for live performances. The Kimmel Center is committed to educating Philadelphia's youth by providing access to quality arts. For more information, visit kimmelcenter.org.
Bachelor Brothers Funeral Services, proudly serving families in 3 locations: Trenton, New Jersey, Broad Street in North Philly, and Garrett Road near West Philly. A tradition of excellence, a promise of care. BachelorBrothers.com or call Bachelor Brothers at 610-713-5560.
Tune in this and every Sunday at 1 p.m. for the Legal Matters Show with attorney Gary Bailey and Philly's own Joe Dock as they discuss the cases and topics in every area of the law, and have your chance to ask the attorney and have your question answered every Sunday at 1 p.m. on Word Radio.
We are progressive and proud and interactive. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at onWURD. This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live at wordradio.com. Word TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at ForWord. Word TV. Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Solutions. This is Dwayne Royster along with Amadi Braxton.
Hello.
So we were just talking about, first of all, Jamila was incredible, and we appreciate it. And some of the workshops that are coming up, we're trying to figure out how we get to some of them, because we just think that they're going to be very helpful. And, really, I was very quiet listening, although I did, make some points in there. But it got me really worked up. And I get worked up about economics. I get worked up about economics around Philadelphia. I get worked up around economics in Philadelphia and black folk in Philly at the same time. For so long, we have 2.5% that of above ground businesses, but we've got probably a large percentage of businesses that are underground. But because people don't have access to capital or resources, don't have access to assets that can help them expand their business and grow it, we have a large underground economy. And when I say underground, a lot of people are like, oh, drug dealers. I'm not talking about drug dealers. I'm talking about the person that sews dresses, that makes the people that sell birthday cakes for folk, but they can't spend $100,000 on getting their kitchen upgraded so that the Philadelphia Department of Health will certify it to be able to do food. It's those kind of things that can be big hurdles for people to be able to find ways. And so we've got to really use some imagination. I mean, honestly, this is a really opportunity and a critique for, in particular, the black church to get back on board with owning economics outside of talking about the prosperity gospel, which we know doesn't work, but to really be able to talk about, being able to access and utilize the resources of the space that they have. Whether we recognize it or not, black churches are themselves cooperatives, right? Those buildings are owned by the congregation, not by individuals.
Right.
So there's this massive people that own an asset in a community that if that church got a commercial kitchen and then rented it out to people to be able to sell their products or do things, or even utilize their space, like we were talking about the folk in Massachusetts about setting up their kitchen so that on Fridays and Saturday nights they can actually sell not just sell dinners, actually set it up like a restaurant, tables and candles and chairs, and people can go in there and have dinner, right? And be able to help small business folk and community folk begin to get a business off the ground together, a cooperative business that benefits congregation, benefits community, provides jobs and opportunities for people. It's that kind of imagination that we have to have that's really going to move Philadelphia. But then this really goes deeper to me, and I know I'm ranting on here, but I got to rant for a minute. That
you always need your rant.
I have to have my
That's
rant
okay.
now. But then the other thing is that we have to have the imagination of political leadership, and I think Jamila was talking about this, right? And I mean, I think that there is a support of municipal government leadership to be able to make the investment, but not to do so in a way that continues to perpetuate capitalist ideologies that are going to continue to make the haves and have-nots. And so how do we get leadership in place, which really goes to the fact that we have an issue at hand right now in that we don't have imaginative, creative leadership, political leadership in the city of Philadelphia, and we've got to do something about this, which then goes back to my conversation that Shamari and I were having last week on his show, and then I picked up on our show last week about the fact that for black folk, we really have to do something to begin to pull together a black political summit to have a conversation amongst ourselves about what's in our best interest and stop using Audre Lorde talks about the fact you can't use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house, that we've got to use another set of tools to both dismantle a system that's oppressing us, including the government here in Philadelphia, and rebuild the situation at the same time. If we operate like a democracy and that we're actually getting duly elected people who are elected by the people and not being elected by the PACs and the people that are throwing the most money at them for a set agenda, then maybe I would feel like we have democracy here. But we keep electing the same folk over and over again who are not operating in the best interest of the people. The people are not participating in the electoral process. We only had 23% that participated in the last week's election because people are sick and tired and don't think anything's really going to change. So we as a people, if we really want to be able to see economic change and move ourselves out of a state of poverty, also have to see political change as a critical piece of creating that change. We have to elect officials that are going to support cooperative economics, that are going to Ujamaa, which is talked about in the Nguzo Saba, or people that celebrate Kwanzaa would understand what I'm talking about, that we're going to begin to talk about economics and politics simultaneously. And then we have to make sure that we keep race at the center of it, because as long as we're talking about economics apart from race in this country, we're never really going to get to any solution. So I'm going to stop right there.
Okay, step down off that soapbox. Take a breath. I appreciate you.
I know. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you.
No, I think you're right. I wanted to just shift gears for a second. I mean, obviously staying on the cooperatives tip, but just to share some of the topics that they have coming up at Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance, PACA, because I think they're really trying to get at this and get people to open their minds to the possibility of doing things differently when it comes to starting a business. They have a workshop. So the workshop coming up on Tuesday, June 4th from 6 to 8:30 is Business Finances for Anti-Capitalists.
Come on now.
And it says, is there a middle ground between being a broke idealist and being a morally bankrupt success? In this workshop, we will explore money myths, personal money stories, and cover the basics of business finance, the tools you need, and why profit matters for every kind of business.
Absolutely.
And then the following Tuesday, financial practices for co-ops and collectives, getting on the same page about money. They have a workshop on systems and design thinking. They have something on inclusive and participatory meeting facilitation. Basically all of the tools that you need to be able to participate in a cooperative enterprise. They have one on that's called Let's Study Municipal Food System Efforts. Are they for co-ops? They have a Spanish language workshop on worker-owned cooperatives, specifically for immigrant-led cooperatives in Philadelphia. So they have a bunch of resources, and it sounds like they're also doing the work of educating our elected officials. I mean, and there are a tiny handful of outside-the-box thinkers who could be persuaded to support this kind of, economic investment in communities, and I think we have to do the work of letting them know. Who do we have on the line?
Reverend Williams from Mount Airy is on the line.
Hi, Reverend Williams.
Don't be so disappointed.
No, sir, we're not disappointed at all.
Not disappointed at all.
Okay, I call in and agree with the host on what some of the churches should be doing economically. This jockey once told me, said, what is better to say, I is poor or I is rich? What makes more sense? And sometimes a lot of the black people are catching hell and calling it fun, so we have to change all that. But the real reason I call in, and Troy would know this, 36 years ago tonight, the 76ers won the National Basketball Championship, and I, along with 5 other men who are all dead now, helped that happen the last game of that night. they won the championship. And we had to do a song at halftime. I was with the Dixie Hummingbirds. Moses is going to take us to the promised land. Wide World Sports called me and said, can you make this song up and sing tonight at the halftime, which we did, and they won the championship.
And it's all because of your song.
Well, it was a good luck charm because Dick Smith was singing God Bless America for the Flies. And so
That's right.
He needed a good luck charm that night. And guess what? They never won the championship since.
So where's your statue? We need a statue of y'all.
You ain't kidding. Well, we do have a historical marker in North Philly for the manager's house. As I said, all the men are dead but me.
Okay.
We got to work on that. But we helped them. And I can't get the Sixers these bites that I've called every year to remind them of that. Get someone to talk about it because it's all new people, I guess, over here. What it may be. But they certainly won. So if someone's listening can help us with that, they should. That's part of history. It's real.
All right.
And thank you for all you're doing. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm so glad that Reverend Williams called and shared that. It's nice to know that, there was a blessing of a song that came that helped the Sixers win the championship. Now, we just need some of the current Sixers to make some investments here in Philadelphia that will, help us get these cooperative businesses off the ground and help to get our political campaign, our Black Political Summit off the ground as well. And I'm really curious what you all think out there about having a Black Political Summit here in Philadelphia. I've been talking to some people about this the last few days about trying to get this off the ground, and would love to know what you, our listeners, are thinking about that. 215-634-8065. Again, 215-634-8065. Last week on the show, we had talked about we were thinking about running independent folk, African-American folk for mayor. But I'm curious what you all think about having a Black Summit. I know there was one that's been had decades ago. Maybe it's time that we have another one. And who do we need to have in that conversation with us? So to really be, to have a well-rounded group in that space. And I know Black church leaders need to be a part of that, but who else needs to be a part of that if we're going to have a real conversation about building Black power? Because it's evident that the Philadelphia government doesn't give a damn about the Black folk that are struggling in poverty, brown folk that are struggling in poverty here in Philadelphia, because they ain't done anything about it. So we got to do it ourselves. So, here right now on Solutions, we're going to come up with a solution and we're going to work on putting a plan together. So we'd love to hear what you all think about that. Marty, what do you think about that?
Well, I was also just going to encourage, before I speak on that, I was also going to encourage people who are calling to call in and share. If you are a business owner and you are wanting to retire your business,
absolutely,
and
that's
thinking
great.
about potentially transitioning it to a co-op, selling your business to your employees, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you have interest in co-ops or thoughts about co-ops, please call in and join the conversation at 215-634-8065. And I was saying during the break that I was a part of a committee that was studying transitioning a business from an LLC that was owned by two people who were of retirement age and were looking to see if they could transition it to a co-op and what that would cost. And it was a whole long process that we went through to study, like, how do we evaluate the business to determine what is the actual monetary value of the business,
right? To
determine how much employees would have to buy out, at what level. Would there be different levels of membership in the co-op where people would have, what would the governance structure of the co-op be? How would the business continue to function? What changes would have to happen in order for it to transition to a co-op model versus, what it was used to being, which was an LLC model. So, it's a process that one can go through and make the determination whether it can work or it can't work. But I think it's worth exploring, particularly if you're trying to keep the wealth in the business and actually keep the business going beyond what you have the capacity to continue doing yourself and leading yourself.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So when I was growing up, I think I mentioned this on the show, but it was like a year and a half ago. My mother was the executive secretary for East Mount Airy Neighbors in the 70s when I was growing up. And actually, E-Man had a food co-op, and we were a part of it. And I remember that my mother would take us down. It was like at the time you had $25 got you membership in the co-op, and of course you got discounted food and things. Although you could, buy, people outside the co-op could go in there and shop, but you paid extra. And we used to have to go in, and I think every member had to work like 2 hours a month or something like that in the co-op. So it was shared, so people had to put labor. They hired a manager, an assistant manager, but the rest of it was all managed by volunteers that had to come in, members that had to come in and do the work. And I remember packing herbs and spices and stocking shelves and mopping floors and doing all those things as a part of a cooperative. And I mean, there were hundreds of people that were a part of that, and that's what made that work. And it lasted for several years, and eventually it closed. But I just know what it means to be able to share and own something cooperatively with the folk in Philadelphia, in the community. It became not only a store. We were eventually down on Vernon Road, right across from St. Raymond's Catholic Church on Vernon Road, right up the street from where Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church is now. And, it was also a place to meet and to catch up with folk and to build community. It was you could go shopping, you could catch up with your neighbors because somebody was working the cash register or somebody was slicing meat or whatever. People got trained in skills on how to run a supermarket. So, those are just important moments that happened for me in my life, but it was also important to understand what can happen when we come together as community and pool our resources. Everybody doesn't have to have a lot, but if everybody puts in a little bit, we can really go and do something very powerful.
Yeah, I know in Brooklyn, New York, there's a very big food co-op there because I had friends who used to live in the neighborhood and used to be members of that co-op, and it had very high quality food, anything that you wanted, anything that you could find in a regular supermarket or Whole Foods or whatever. And but very, very inexpensive. Yeah, like way cheaper than any prices for any place I'm shopping here. And the way that they had their prices so low was that all of the labor was volunteer. It was all done by the members, and they have tens of thousands of members in this co-op, and so everybody donates 2 hours a month, but you have a fully staffed operation there that doesn't really have many labor costs at all. They may pay the manager or whatever. Right. But so they could keep the costs really, really low in terms of food. Now, there's other models where you actually, like I know at Mariposa Food Co-op in Chestnut Hill, and I'm sorry,
West Philly.
I'm talking about Weaver's Way.
Yeah, Weaver's Way is in
so
Chestnut Hill.
they employ a lot of people with a living wage. Prices are more expensive, but they employ people and they pay.
They have ethical practices,
Yeah, they pay full benefits and salary there. So there's different ways of doing it. But back to the political summit idea.
Yes.
I support that idea if it's really about people communicating about a platform that will get people out of poverty. I don't want to go to another summit where there's just a lot of grandstanding, particularly by men. You know how that goes.
Well, if I'm going to be a part of it, it's not going to be a bunch of men up there because I believe right now the voices that we need to hear the most are women of color.
Okay.
So
all right. I'm glad that you said that we have you on the record for that.
No, it's done for real. I mean, that's
no. I know that's the kind of person you are. But when I hear Black Political Summit, I hear I get this image of pontificating when we really need to be actually coming together around a progressive platform that is designed with a set of policies that we believe, if carried out, are going to lead to, the liberation of people from poverty. Yeah. In this city.
I agree.
And a set of practices and quality of life issues that are going to benefit people. So I'm all for putting forth a more progressive Black political agenda than has been put forth. I don't think that I didn't really hear a truly fully fleshed out Black progressive agenda from any of the candidates that were running.
Well, I mean, I think there might have been some, but they were probably at the council at large races. And there were so many candidates that you didn't really get a chance to hear from a lot of them. The folk that were backed by establishments, were the ones that you heard from the most because they had the financial resources to be able to get out and tell their story. So I also think that, the establishment does not have an imagination for getting us out of poverty. Otherwise, we'd be out of poverty. And I got to be honest with you, that's both black and white and brown, right? And in terms of all levels of leadership here in the city of Philadelphia.
Agreed.
Nobody has done anything. I mean, it's not like the poverty rate is new.
Or people have been tinkering around the edges and haven't really looked at what fundamental changes need to happen.
Well, but I also think that there's a definite capitalist mentality that whether we agree with it or not, there's a trickle down notion. So like getting developers and getting, gentrifying communities is like, oh, we'll get more money in our communities and then we won't be poor anymore. Well, you won't be poor anymore because you've displaced all the poor people in Philadelphia. So that's not a solution. And if that's what people think a solution is, I would suggest that every Philadelphian who is struggling right now rise up and war against that, because that is not the way we're going to get ourselves out of this situation. We need people with plans, imagination, creativity, and are willing to take some risk on some people to be able to make these things happen.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think, we depend on the business class to try to get us out of these situations.
That's a bad idea.
And they don't have our interests.
No,
they have their bottom line interests at heart. So, I would say it's the rare business person that is actually about sustainability of communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, wow, we're up on a break already.
Yeah.
We're past our break time.
Sorry.
That's okay. Rants are good.
Absolutely.
You're listening to Solutions on WURD. Join the conversation at 215-634-8065 when we come back from the break. We want to hear your views, and we'll be right back.
Listen to Word Radio on the go with the Word Radio app. Search for WURD in your favorite app store today and take us with you wherever you go. Stay connected to Word Radio, independent black media.
I ain't no better than you, and you ain't no better than me. But we all have something in common. We all are species, seeds of God's creation.
Tune in to Messages in the Music every Friday night with Joey T, midnight to 6 a.m. right here on WURD.
Listen live at wordradio.com.
Enterprise Exterminators provides customers with the highest quality service. Enterprise will evaluate and eliminate whatever pest problems you may have, specializing in bed bugs, fleas, mice, and termites. Hurry down to 4943 Wayne Avenue or call 215-849-7070. Enterprise services Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey and is licensed and insured. Free inspection and do-it-yourself kits are available. Call now and ask about their Word discount. 215-849-7070.
Word TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now. Tune in on YouTube at onWURD or on Facebook at forward. Word TV. Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Solutions. This is Dwayne Royster along with Amadi Braxton. We're having a deep conversation about black politics, black economics, how we're going to change the damn city. Amen, somebody.
Amen.
We have Larry from Lansdowne on the line. Larry, welcome to Solutions.
Yes, sir. I missed the, Philadelphia Corporation Alliance. Is that the name of the?
Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance.
Right. And they're having a workshop, and I missed the date and place.
Oh, okay. They have a series of workshops coming up. It looks like they are. The first one is next Tuesday, June 4th at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And it's at a place called Spaces at 100 South Juniper Street.
Spaces, S-T-A-C.
Spaces like outer space.
S-P-A-C-Y.
S-P-A-C-E-S. And it's 100 South Juniper Street.
Okay.
And it's called Business Finances for Anti-Capitalists. That's the name of the workshop.
Okay, and that's 100 South Juniper.
Juniper, yes.
Juniper.
It's right next to what's the Macy's now? I guess it used to be Wanamaker's. It's
right.
Yeah, it's right. It's right between there.
And what was the time?
6 o'clock.
Okay.
And then the following Tuesday, same time, same location, financial practices for co-ops and collectives.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But if you go to their website is Philadelphia.org. Co-op, C-O-O-P.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to their events page, you should find the list of upcoming events that they have.
Okay. All right.
So you have an interest in cooperatives?
Well, yes. What I'm doing now, I been playing around in the business circle for a while, and I'm got a general, what I call a book of business, which is some ideas and concepts, and I'm putting that together, and I'm, trying to
launch it.
Yeah, and I guess this, would be probably part of the networking that I can, continue to get information and meet people and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they would be a great resource.
Yep. Okay.
Great. Well, Larry, thanks for giving us a call. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Great.
So, I mean, I want to jump back to the Black Political Summit here for a minute.
I know you do.
I've been ranting and raving about this all day. So, I'm sorry, folks. Y'all caught me on one of those moments today.
So tell us what will be the goals of the Black Independent Political Summit.
So here's my thing. I went off about this last week, right? 23% of the electorate voted last week. So it was only like 200 and something thousand people. There's over almost 1.1 million registered voters here in the city of Philadelphia.
That are registered?
There are 1.1 million registered voters in the city of Philadelphia.
That are registered?
Registered to vote.
Not eligible to vote.
Not
registered
eligible.
to vote.
Registered to vote. 23% actually voted. And actually, Omar Shabir, who is now the Democratic nominee to become one of the city commissioners, was on the show Laborers Live right before, and we were out in the hallway talking to him. And I was going off about the fact that there was an article in Billy Penn about the fact that they were celebrating that we got to 23% turnout for the vote. And I was like, that's ridiculous.
Like, why are we celebrating
Right.
that?
And he said because the original projections were only 9%, that 9% of the city was going to turn out to vote in the election. And so part of it for me is when we think about a Black Political Summit, how do we motivate 100,000 African Americans to vote in the general election in November? Because if we get 100,000 African Americans who are not a part of the group that actually voted, right, and there are actually, so that I can be accurate about that, there are over 500,000 African Americans registered to vote in the city of Philadelphia. So folk are not voting. And there are folk out there that are already registered. I'm not even talking about registering new people. I'm just talking about getting people that are actually on the rolls out to vote. And so I think one of the objectives would be can we get 100,000 people who had not voted in the primary to vote in the general election? Can we raise the money to do that, right? Raise money to get people that are knocking on doors.
Out the vote work.
Yeah, get out knocking on doors, that are doing phone banking, that are doing mailers to remind people that they need to get out to vote. Can we put together a platform for Black folk for Philadelphia, right, that talks about what it is, and then challenge every candidate to sign on and commit within the first 100 days of the next administration to enacting every piece of our platform? If they're not willing to do that, then we have to run our own thing. We have to run our own people who come from the community and get them into positions of power in office, whether it's city council, whether it's the mayor, whether it's the judgeships. How do we have a city that's 44% Black? We're the largest group in the city, and we elect no people, no Black folk to be judges in the city of Philadelphia. Now, we elected a super progressive DA, and we don't elect judicial candidates that are going to, go along with having a progressive mindset about how to change the city through the judiciary. I think that's problematic. And, that's a lack of people voting, lack of people getting educated about what was happening and who was out there voting. I was at a jazz concert not too long ago. My nephew had put out a jazz album, and when he was there was actually a woman there who was running for a judge. She didn't get elected. And, this was all Black crowd. I mean, it wasn't a huge venue, but, how are we making sure that we're actually going to elect people that are going to look at our community and be empowered and help to empower our community at the same time? So, I think, so again, 100,000 voters who did not vote in the primary to vote in the general election. And to be honest with you, with 100,000 votes, we could actually turn the tide of the election, literally turn the tide of the election in the general election. Secondly, to raise money. And so folk got to stop being cheap. And if you want to see real change in the city, you know, and I mean, for some folk, $10 is a stretch, but give you $10. For some folk, giving $10,000 isn't a stretch, but give you $10,000. And we need to not be afraid to ask people for the money, because we need to see a different Philadelphia. Philadelphia's not working for the majority of people that live in it. So let's put our money to the test and see if we can't really get some people elected that are going to really work in the best interest of our folk. Put together the platform that we're going to be able to judge everybody else with. And then finally, if we can't find political candidates that line up 100% with our vision and are willing to implement it in the first 100 days, then to go recruit our own people to run for every office, because with 100,000 votes, we can pretty much take any seat in the city of Philadelphia. That's my thoughts about it. But you can feel free to let me know what you think about that.
So you're saying we would have to run independent candidates, right? Because
well, if the folk that are running aren't going to implement our agenda within the first 100 days, then yeah, we got to run our own candidates independently.
When you say, when you say implement our agenda in the first 100 days, I mean, nobody can implement an entire agenda in 100 days.
They can take steps towards it.
Yeah, they can take steps.
I mean, I'm not saying it's got to be totally implemented in 100 days, but I'm saying that you have said, you know, if you happen to have said, well, I'm going to end stop and frisk on my first day in office, and then 3.5 years later, you still haven't done anything about stop. That's problematic.
Yes.
When you said you're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and in your first 100 days, all of a sudden you're like, well, what I was really talking about was that people should be able to organize unions and be able to get their wages up. That's problematic. And so what I'm talking about is folk that in the first 100 days saying, I'm going to be accountable to taking steps towards implementing these things, and I got an imagination to be able to do these 5 things this way. Now, it might not happen totally that direction, but at least show us that you got a plan and that you're willing to implement it. And if you're not willing to implement it, then we're going to hold you accountable and say, we can't vote for you because you're not going to operate in the best interest of our communities.
Right. No, I totally agree. I think between now and November is, you know, I think that's a very short time frame, but hey, anything is possible.
Well, I mean, if we're going to do it, we've got to do this quickly, because part of the challenge is, so I believe the deadline for independent candidates is August to be able to get on the ballot. And so they have to actually get a lot of signatures to be able to do that. And so we really need to think about what that looks like and who we would, you know, want to run, if that's possible. I mean, folk might get together and say, look, you know, that's not our will, but we need to hold these candidates accountable. I mean, right now, to be honest with you, with the low voter turnout and the way the numbers turned out in terms of the black vote, right, there's no reason that really any of these candidates have to do anything for the black community.
Exactly.
So,
well, I mean, and you know, and maybe maybe a plan B is that we do the groundwork, we start the groundwork, and over the next few years, we begin to develop a constituency of people around a platform.
Yep.
And that that platform will be the guiding principles by which they raise hell.
Well, but I also think we got to get at least one person elected, because we need to do something that's going to shake somebody up and let them know that we're building real power.
Well, we can try to do that, but I'm just saying between now and November, look, we're having our little strategy session on the air right now.
We want you to be a part of it. Come on now.
But I think, you know, it's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
If we can get one person elected, that would be great. And a plan B, if that is not possible, is also to just build the deep bench of constituents that will raise hell on every policy issue and will be educated and informed, and will be raising hell throughout, you know, the next several years, where any of these issues come up around housing, around wages, around quality of life, around the impoverishment, around gentrification in neighborhoods, around the school system, all this stuff, that there will be a solid constituency that will come out and raise hell. And then, you know, they will be ready, they will be activated when it comes time to raise hell during election times and raise hell at the ballot box.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and I think that's part of it, right? Also, the thing is that we got to develop a deep bench of people to be able to run for office, right?
Exactly.
I don't believe in just the outside game. I think we have to have an outside and inside game simultaneously. And the way to get the inside game is you got to have people that you're running for office that are going to run the agenda that the people on the outside are pushing for.
Exactly.
So want to make sure that we are developing that bench. So part of that is, but the other thing of it is people got to get into practice of running too. Running for political office is no joke. It's intense. You got to be able to stand up to scrutiny, all kinds of scrutiny. I've been talking to people about running. They're like, well, I got this problem, I got that problem. Everybody's backing down.
I got this skeleton, I got that skeleton.
I mean, part of it is I need somebody who's got no shame out there that doesn't care.
Right.
You know, I need the progressive black version of Donald Trump. Not to act like him, but not to be afraid of past mistakes and let that hold it against you, because I think people will try to shame folk like, oh, you've got to be wealthy and you've never have to have a problem in your life.
And you have to be perfect.
And you got to be perfect. And that's bullcrap. That doesn't work that way.
And real people have real problems. So, you know, I think a legitimate candidate coming from a working, like any working person has had financial struggles.
Absolutely.
Or has had
you've
other
had your
issues.
lights shut off, you've had the gas cut off,
or may have had
a
substance abuse problem,
Absolutely.
or may have other issues in your past.
File bankruptcy.
And right, and you know, I don't think that should preclude people from running for office as long as they have integrity, that they learn from whatever past things they've been through.
That's right.
And that they are, you know, supporting the platform. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we have Val in Maine on the line.
Yep. Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Good. I think your idea is great. But I'm thinking it needs to have, or part of the building block I would recommend, and this is something I've been thinking of for a long time, is like free school, like community school. And I don't mean for kids, I mean for adults, because my observation just in general, all across the color line, Americans don't know how the government works, how it runs, what democracy is. And years ago, when I was a teenager, Philadelphia used to have a lot of which was called preschool, and we used to run during the summer. I learned at 15, I was introduced to dialectical materialism in the basement of Penn. That was totally free. I take free classes up at 48 and Baltimore Avenue in the basement of the church up there.
Of the Calvary Church?
At the Calvary Church in the basement. I used to take free classes during the summer on, and there always was a list of stuff. So this is before you go and you read your list of subjects, what you might be interested in, and you would just check it off. If they got 4 people to sit in, but what I'm talking about is the implementation of that. Also communicating with other progressive people. Black Radical Congress Conference, which was in Chicago many years ago, AAU, Asian Arts United, gave me the money because I didn't have the money to go to Black Radical Congress in in Chicago. And so I'm saying, so it needs to be talking to other progressives and how they're doing stuff, and so even so, educating blacks, you can get. I believe there are other people who will help or even create spaces. Like I think the Quaker houses would probably provide free space for workshops and stuff like that. But I'm saying you have to start reaching out to different communities to and enlighten them and help them understand. And it's not even just low-income people. Believe me, I know a whole lot of six-figure people who don't know how the government works.
Yeah,
I'm talking about black people in particular, but the taking the steps into getting involved so they can sense their power and discover their own agency. So that's what I'm throwing out there.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment.
Thanks, Val. We appreciate you giving us a call in. I was up in Maine this week, and I couldn't couldn't get over to you, but maybe next time we're in the area. So we got to go to break, but we have callers on the line. So when we come back, we're going to take some more of your calls. 215-634-8065. We're talking about Black power building, Black independent political power building, Black independent economic building on the show tonight. Feel free to give us a call, 215-634-8065. We'll be right back on the other side of these commercials.
Hey, Pico customers, how would you like to save energy and money and get $75 for that old working fridge or freezer in your garage or basement? Well, Pico makes it easy for you. They'll come to your home, pick it up, dispose of it responsibly, and give you $75. That's right, $75. Just schedule your pickup at pico.com/recycling or call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE today. That's pico.com/recycling or call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE.
Be heard.
Be heard.
Want another way to join the conversation?
Follow us on social media
Using the hashtag onWURD.
Be heard.
Stay connected to Word Radio.
Independent Black Media.
Bachelor Brothers Funeral Services, proudly serving families in 3 locations: Trenton, New Jersey, Broad Street in North Philly, and Garrett Road near West Philly. A tradition of excellence, a promise of care. BachelorBrothers.com or call Bachelor Brothers at 610-713-5560.
Word TV. We're streaming live video of this conversation right now.
Tune in on YouTube at onWURD
Or on Facebook at ForWord.
Word TV.
Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Solutions. This is Amadi Braxton, your co-host, along with Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Hello.
And we are joined by Frank from West Philly. Frank, you there?
Yes, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. You know, I'm one of those old politicians of West Philly.
Okay.
There's always a cause and effect for everything. We see the effect, but we got to identify the causes. And let me just tell you this as I've seen in politics for 40 years. Politicians that we elect, they are our leaders, but they don't lead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? When you see for example, when you see buildings going up in Center City, and you're seeing companies paving streets in West Philly and North Philly and South Philly and building schools, and there ain't no black people on those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They're sitting on the steps, African Americans, sitting on the steps, looking at these people build these here buildings. And we could talk about Martin Luther King. We all know about Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. But that's history. And we should know our history. But you can't say we've got to vote because of Martin Luther King. Everybody has a self-interest in what they're doing. Irish, Italian, Jews, and why not African Americans? And we don't see it. Now you tell me why. Don't even give me the history. We all know the history, and the young people may not. But do you tell me why I should go to the polls when I don't have a job, my mother and father didn't have a job, my grandmother and grandfather didn't have a job? You tell me why. Give me a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We have a self-interest. And the self-interest is I'm going to the polls because I want to keep my job. Okay? And you know, and one thing about Democrats and Republicans, and I would never vote for a Republican. I'm like Trump's Republicans. The Trump Republicans, they'll never vote for a Democrat in their life. And I would never vote for a Republican in my life, because my ideology is not the same as theirs, and it never will be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I would never vote for a Republican. That's just me personally. But people have to have an interest. The only jobs that I see downtown is Sam Staten Sr., when he was alive, and Sam Staten Jr. Okay? Few and far between. You politicians, you know, y'all got to lead. Y'all got to make sure that black, Africans, and Hispanics are on those jobs, and give me a reason to go to the polls on election day, and stop telling me about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. I know about them.
Yes.
You tell me why. Give me a reason. We elected you. And you're telling me go to the polls and vote. What? To keep you in office? To give you a job for 2 years? To give you a job for 4 years? Give me a reason. And I don't want to sound upset, but
no, I think you're right.
You are our leaders. That's why we elected you. Okay? And you want us to vote? Give us a reason.
I think you make an excellent point, Frank. Thank you for your call. I mean, you have to give people, Frank was talking about people go to the polls out of self-interest.
Right.
Because they feel like they're voting for candidates that are actually going to deliver things that are going to benefit their lives and improve their lives. And when you don't have anybody actually convincing you of that, why would you be motivated to go to the polls? So I think he's right. I think people have to be motivated by candidates and by a platform and a set of principles and a set of policies that they know is actually going to transform their lives. And right now we don't have that.
So I think,
few and far between.
I think that if you're in a district that has majority unemployment, if the politicians are serving a district that has majority unemployment, then I think the members of the district ought to come together and help that council person get in touch with what it feels like to be unemployed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that is part of it, right? If they don't care enough about the unemployed people who are marginalized, struggling in their communities, to do something about it, and they're making, $80,000 a year, $125,000 a year, $140,000 a year, all depending on what role they have in government, then they ought to experience unemployment for themselves, and perhaps the next time they decide to go run for office, they'll have a very different perspective on people who are struggling here across the city. Of course, a lot of times their friends throw them safety nets and give them jobs in the the private industry so that they don't have to worry about that anymore.
Right.
Anyway, we got to get this together. So we got to get a platform. Actually, I heard Val, and one of the things that I think that somebody should be saying here in Philadelphia is that, and he wasn't talking about this in particular, but I'm lifting it up, is that Community College of Philadelphia should be free for everybody in the city of Philadelphia. You live in Philly, you should be able to go to community college for free. And I know that for some people, they're able to get Pell Grants, and that Pell Grants almost pretty much cover the tuition, but that doesn't necessarily cover books, doesn't cover, other incidental expenses that come with going to community college. I went to community college years ago, so I totally get it. The second thing is that and we need to make sure that we are using community spaces to be able to be venues of education, right? Not everybody can travel downtown. I know that KCP has a couple of campuses around, but we need to make sure that people have access to free quality education. That would be such a big boon for being able to help people get prepared. One of the challenges that we have is that people go to community college, but some of our kids are graduating high school and they're using their Pell Grant money to pay for them to do remedial classes so that they don't have enough money to finish their programs to be able to do what they have to do. So that's problematic.
Yeah. And I think, I was reading this article the other day on NPR's news site about also, when you were saying people need to show up and if you're living in a high poverty district, you need to show up and show your elected official what it means to be unemployed.
Yeah.
People need to be taking direct action. That's what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about people have to be raising hell. Before the election, people have to be raising hell. There's an article that I read about the organization ACT UP, which is AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. Which was founded in the 80s to deal with the AIDS crisis and epidemic that was killing thousands of people, and the government was doing nothing about it. And it's really through ACT UP that we have any kind of treatment today, that we have access to HIV drugs. I mean, they were the ones fighting for lowering drug prices back in the day. And the article was basically about how their new fight is around a particular drug that is being used as a prophylactic against people catching HIV. So something that you can take. PrEP, right. That prevents you from catching the virus, and that the cost of the drug is so outrageously expensive, a lot of people can't afford it. And so they have relaunched a coalition around this, and they have a congressional strategy, they have a legal strategy, they're confronting Trump administration officials in their faces. They're going to the shareholder meetings of the pharmaceutical company that's producing the drug and raising hell there.
Absolutely.
So they have a multi-level strategy, and that's what I think we have to do.
Absolutely.
But we also have to, that requires people to be educated about the issues and what steps they can take to, and how policies are affecting the issues that they care about, and what steps they can take, and what politicians' actions should be in order to improve their lives. So, fighting on all fronts, basically.
You gotta do that. Well, look, we have LC from Old City that's on the line. LC, welcome to Solutions.
And a good evening to you.
Good evening.
Pastor.
Thank you.
And what's your name?
Amadi.
Your partner? Amadi. Thank you. I've heard it, and I just couldn't.
That's all right. That's all right. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say that I am in agreement that we definitely must have a strategy, and I believe that all of our civil rights organizations should come together and have the same strategy. I wish we would be coordinated, with Reverend Dr. Barber down in North Carolina.
More movement, yeah.
He's doing a great work. He has great ideas, and I think if you all could get together, and Reverend Sharpton and Rodney Muhammad and the other groups, it would be wonderful. And Pastor, I just want to say that, yes, I think it's an absolute disgrace that in the city of Philadelphia there's 44.7% black. And I don't like to say people who call it black people.
That's right.
That here we are, and we did not get not one common pleas court judge elected.
Right.
Now, that to me is intentional.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's no way you couldn't accidentally achieve that result. So we have to do something about it. I heard Brother Shamari a little bit last week and a little today. I tried to get in, but I couldn't get on earlier. That's what we need to do. And, yes, we need to go out and get these independent candidates. And we need to, in our home, sit down with our families and let them know this is what we have to do. This is for our survival and thriving. Not just to survive, but to thrive. That's what we need. And I just want you to know I'm on board.
Thank you.
Count on me. Okay?
Thank you so much.
I'm going to continue to do the work that I do. I try to educate voters and send out information and show up and, have sessions. So I'm on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that, LC. Actually, it's interesting.
I think there's an appetite out there for
it. I think people are hungry. I think they really want to try to see this thing get turned around, and I'm all on that. Raphael's online. He's like, well, how are you going to raise money for this in a poor city like Philly? And I'm reminded that years ago, the historically black colleges and universities that we have were built by people collecting pennies, dimes, and nickels in their congregations and sending it in. The American Missionary Association was one of those that helped to build out a lot of these schools. It wasn't the only one, but one of them. And it was built off the pennies, nickels, and dimes of people from all across the country. And I think, honestly, if we're going to build out this movement, to keep it centered, we had to raise our own money. And I mean, I think, part of the challenge of some of our civil rights organizations is that they're supported by folk that have agendas. And so I really want to see the people of Philadelphia raise their own money, and so they can come to the table and create their own agenda. I would like us to do a democratic process, a hyper-democratic process, to be able to create the agenda and to support the people that we're going to support here in the city of Philadelphia. I think that's the only way that it's going to happen, to be able to make that kind of change. And so it's going to be folk like LC calling in and saying that they're down and, willing to put in $1, $5, $10, whatever they can put in.
Small dollar donors.
Small dollar donors. Look,
That's
Obama did
for
that.
The future.
Bernie Sanders did it, and I'm pretty confident Philadelphia can do it as well. So I'm really excited about to see this happen.
Yes.
So
agreed.
Anyway, we are up on the end of our show.
I know.
And time really flew today.
It sure did.
It felt like it really flew today.
Yeah.
And it's good to be here with you.
Yeah, great conversation. I do want to end with one last ridiculousness by the inhabitant of the White House.
Oh, Lord. We were doing so good.
He is imposing a 5% tariff on Mexico that will be increased each month that they don't do something about the immigration problem coming across the border. How ridiculous is that?
Like they can control that.
Okay.
Can they control that?
I just had to say that.
I just,
he is ridiculous.
That is an understatement.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Troy, for that special quote by our former president.
Yeah, that's right. Keep saying former president, right? We got to speak that into existence. So, absolutely. Well,
but anyway.
Yes.
I just had to note that. However, I think we are in an interesting moment and a time where, you know, we can move toward a different political reality, and I think we just have to bring it about.
Absolutely.
You know, and I know that there's enough people with goodwill and interest in doing some independent politicking because, you know, the machine, the Democratic Party machine, you know, they've been in power for so long, and where have we gotten?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Incremental change. And people, you know, it's almost like it's designed to disincentivize people from participating.
Absolutely.
You know? And it's like,
it
you know, a minority of people are controlling things, basically.
Well, that is oligarchy, right, in every sense of the word.
Yeah, so
plutocracy. This is probably plutocracy more so than oligarchy.
So we'll continue developing this idea.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll keep talking about it on the show.
So I think you should share it.
I should share it?
You should share it.
Okay, we'll talk about that offline, off the air.
I'm putting you on the air. I'm putting you on the spot on the air. I'm letting you know. I think you should share it.
We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
We'll report back on that on a future show.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amadi, for being here. Thank you, Troy, for doing what you do as an engineer and producing the show on tonight. Thank you to all of our listeners out there. We especially want to thank Jamila for joining us and being a part. We're going to have her back.
Jamila Medley.
Yeah, she needs a regular segment on the show.
I know. I mean, I felt like we cut the conversation short. We could have talked about so many more aspects of it.
Absolutely.
But yes, Jamila Medley, we thank you, Executive Director of the Philadelphia Area Cooperative Alliance. And again, go to Philadelphia.coop, Philadelphia.coop to find out upcoming events. They have a series of workshops coming up that sound pretty interesting. If you're interested in cooperative economics, or if you're just interested in networking with other people about your business ideas, it would be it's a great resource.
Yeah, please check that out. It's a great way to go. I'm actually going to try to come up to some of those training sessions. I want to be in those.
Yeah, me too.
To that.
Me too.
All right. Well, I think Envy McKee is up in a little bit on the lounge. She and DJ Frosty Phoenix. She's the rapper, he's the DJ. That's what she says every single week. And we're excited. Please check them out. They always have a great show as well. I always listen to it as I'm driving back down home. And look forward. And we'll be back on next Friday from 5 to 7 with solutions.
Yep. Thank you to all our callers for joining the conversation.
Go change the damn world.
We'll be back next week. Peace.
All right.
Some bull-ass reasons. But we about to put it in